Most of us have been lied to about Cinco de Mayo and what it really commemorates. It's not tacos, it's not margaritas. It's something so unexpected no one saw it coming. This is the story about how Mexico pulled off a shocking military upset and why that's still important today. It starts with debt, empire, and an army that was not supposed to win. But what it led to was one of the most unexpected military victories in all of Latin American history. Friend, welcome to the Mysteries of Latin America. I'm Andrew Colon, and here I tell the stories of the myths, legends, history, and unsolved mysteries happening everywhere from the northern border of Mexico to the southern tip of Argentina and all across the Caribbean islands. I think it's important that we know the story of what Cinco de Mayo is about and what it's not about. Because let's be honest, a lot of people think that Cinco de Mayo is Mexican Independence Day. People with Mexican roots and people without. But what it really is a story of resistance, pride, and ripple effects that crossed borders. And that story deserves to be told the right way. So to understand why, let's separate fact from fiction. Cinco de Mayo is not Mexican Independence Day. That day is September the 16th, known as El Grito de la Independencia, the cry or the shout of independence. It commemorates the moment in 1810 when Father Miguel Hidalgo y Costilla, a Catholic priest, is said to have rung the church bell in the town of Dolores in the state that now bears his name, Hidalgo, and called the people to rise up against Spanish rule. And you know you've heard it, but that rallying cry, Viva Mexico, is still reenacted every year by the President of Mexico and local officials all across the country. But there's something you might not have heard in the official ceremonies. Some modern historians have started to question parts of that story. There's little real documentation of what exactly Hidalgo said that night, or even if he actually did ring a bell or if he rang it himself. And the movement that followed was messy, fractured, and filled with regional interests and egos. Not a single unified cry for a Mexican nation, but still the symbolic weight of El Grito remains. It marks the real beginning of Mexico's fight for independence from Spain. But Cinco de Mayo? That's a very different battle in a very different decade and against a very different enemy. Back in 1838, France had already used a minor incident to invade Mexico. A French baker in the town of Tacubaya, now part of Mexico City, claimed that Mexican soldiers ransacked and looted his bakery shop during a riot. He demanded compensation. Mexico said, France responded with warships and a naval blockade. It became known, half jokingly, half seriously, as La Guerra de los Pasteles, the Pastry War. By the way, if you want the full story of how a French baker helped trigger a war, click the link in the description so you can see the full episode on the Pastry War. That short conflict set the tone that whenever France wanted something, it would not hesitate to bring in the big guns. So fast forward to 1861. Mexico is in financial ruin after years of conflict. President Benito Juarez announces a 2-year suspension on foreign debt payments. Britain, Spain, and France all send naval forces to demand payment. But while Spain and Britain reach an agreement and back off, France sees a bigger opportunity. Napoleon III, nephew of Napoleon Bonaparte and ruler of France, wants to expand his influence into the Americas. He sees Mexico as the perfect place to set up a puppet empire, one that would benefit French interests and challenge U.S. power in the region. And here's where it gets really convoluted. France decides to send a European royal, but not a French one, but Archduke Ferdinand Maximilian of Austria, from the powerful Habsburg family, as the new emperor of Mexico. So let me get this right. A French empire with an Austrian emperor in Latin America. The math was not mathing. But that's how determined Napoleon III was to turning Mexico into a European-style monarchy. And that's what had French troops marching into central Mexico, headed toward a city named Puebla. On May 5th, 1862, the French army arrives at Puebla, well-trained, well-equipped, and ready to crush the resistance. Waiting for them is General Ignacio Zaragoza, with a much smaller, poorly equipped force of Mexican soldiers, volunteers, and militia. Everyone expected the French to steamroll over the Mexican forces. Instead, Mexico won. The French were forced to retreat. It was a stunning upset. Think of it like the Mexican version of 300, outnumbered, outgunned, but standing their ground against an empire. The bad news? The victory doesn't end the war, and it didn't stop France from returning in greater numbers after it. But for that moment, Mexico stood its ground. And that one day, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, that echo would ripple for decades and across borders. Because for millions of people in the U.S., Cinco de Mayo is more than just history. It's identity, it's survival, it's pride. Here in Mexico, Cinco de Mayo is mainly celebrated in the state of Puebla with military parades, battle reenactments, and civic ceremonies. It's more like a city pride event, honoring the battle and the people who fought. Outside of Puebla, not really. I mean, unless you count tourist areas like here in Cancun or Los Cabos or Vallarta, not really a big deal here in the country. But in the U.S., Cinco de Mayo took on a whole new meaning, especially during the Chicano movement in the 1960s and 70s. In cities like Los Angeles, Denver, San Antonio, San Jose, and others, Chicano activists saw the Battle of Puebla as more than just history. It was a metaphor for their struggle. At a time when Mexican Americans were facing segregation in schools and public places, being punished for speaking Spanish in schools, the idea of standing your ground wasn't just history, it was their reality. Police brutality and political exclusion were everyday battles. And for farm workers and families trying to survive, labor exploitation and cultural erasure made the fight more personal. Underdogs fighting empires. Sound familiar? Organizations like Mecha, the Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlán, the Brown Berets, and the Mexican American Youth Organization started using Cinco de Mayo as a rallying point, hosting events, teach-ins, and marches tied to identity and resistance. And while Cesar Chavez focused on labor rights through the United Farm Workers, his movement helped define a new generation of Mexican American identity. His calls for dignity, unity, and peaceful resistance resonated deeply within the Chicano cause. Meanwhile, in Denver, Colorado, Rodolfo Corky Gonzalez founded the Crusade for Justice, a civil rights and cultural empowerment organization that became the hub for Chicano activism in the Southwest. So together with the Brown Berets, Mecha, and others, they helped turn Cinco de Mayo into a symbol of cultural survival in the U.S. Cinco de Mayo was never just a party. It was a statement. We're still here, and we're not going anywhere. So, is Cinco de Mayo about Mexican independence? Well, not the original independence from Spain, like July 4th is for Americans in the U.S. Cinco de Mayo is about defending sovereignty, fighting back against empire. It's about standing your ground when no one expects you to win. And for many Mexican Americans, it became a declaration of cultural independence. A reminder that heritage is worth celebrating and protecting. And yes, today Cinco de Mayo is an opportunity for marketing in the U.S. to sell beer, tequila, and little sombrero party hats. But that doesn't mean that we can't raise a glass to people still fighting for independence, for survival, and for respect. Salud. Now, if you learned something new, hit like and subscribe for more hidden histories from all over Latin America. And if somebody tells you that Cinco de Mayo is still Mexican Independence Day, send them to this video. And if you have any more information, stories, or details about Cinco de Mayo, go ahead and let us know in the comments. The last set of comments for the pastry war was really enlightening, and I'm really glad you took the time out to give us some new insights and new perspectives on the pastry war itself. I learned a lot. Thank you. Friend, thank you for watching and listening. I'm Andrew Colon, and remember, not everything that's unexplained stays that way for very long. And until next time, stay curious and adios.